Hi everyone, so as David said, my name's Caitlyn. A little bit about me, I study nursing and psychology, so I'm a third year at QUT. So I guess what I'm talking to you about today is I, a couple of weeks ago, represented Girls Brigade worldwide at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. So I represented Australia and the Pacific, which is one of our fellowships. So I wanted to just give a little bit of a background on the UN. I think that it's often seen as this thing that's quite hard to understand. It's complex, and it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment with the World Health Organization, who is part of the UN. We've all heard a lot about their work with COVID. So most people would be aware the UN is an intergovernmental organization. So that means that countries opt in to participating in UN processes. It's not run by any one country, and countries are able to participate in decision-making at the UN and decide which policies and processes from that space they can bring back to their country. So the part of the UN that I was involved in is UN Women, which most people would be aware of. They're involved in gender equality works. So the conference I went to is the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. It's the second largest conference run by the UN, next to General Assembly. You might know General Assembly because Greta Thunberg spoke there a couple of years ago with her powerful speech on climate change. You might also know the UN from Malala Yousafzai. She was the young girl who was shot by the Taliban. So the big hall she's in, that's the kind of conversations we're having at the UN. That's the kind of discussion that's happening in those spaces. COVID changed that. So this year, I actually attended all online from my bedroom and random places in the house at 1 a.m. So how did Girls Brigade start to get into the UN? We're what we call an ECOSOC member. We're part of the Economic and Social Council. Members who are part of the ECOSOC accredited system have certain privileges with the UN that means that we can participate in quite an involved way. Some of those privileges we have is that we as Girls Brigade can attend high-level events and speak out. So when you picture the hall and you picture people sitting at those little tables with their little microphones and the sign, that's what Girls Brigade's doing. It also means that we can put forward a statement to the UN. This year, I wasn't involved in creating our statement, but it essentially says to the UN, this is what we expect from the conference. So we did our statement in conjunction with a number of organisations. Off the top of my head, there was about 20. Part of those were Christian Aid, Open Doors International, a number of Baha'i international organisations, Muslim Aid. So it was very intercultural, and that was really important for creating a strong statement. So what was my role at the UN? We presented a session as a non-government organisation. I'm not an expert in gender equality, so I was really there as a young person saying, this is my experience, and this is how I think we should move forward as an international agenda. So my experience at the UN was quite challenging this year because it was juxtaposed with lots of the sexual assault allegations coming out of Parliament. That was an important challenge for me because it highlighted the fact that we have a very long way to go. And I think that even though Australia on the surface may seem like we've reached gender equality, it's clear in the past few weeks that we have a lot of work to do. But I think part of my experience at the conference was very encouraging as well. I wanted to talk about some of the speakers I got to hear from because they've left a mark on my gender equality journey. So one of the speakers I got to hear from, her name is Taylor Gray. She's a young Indigenous lawyer, and she challenged the High Court during COVID-19 about the Black Lives Matter protest. She won her case, and she's only about 23. I also got to hear from a PhD candidate, Michaela Guthridge. She is a neuroscientist. She's currently developing an empathy framework which could help us empathize with each other, especially young men, to help understand how they can act in gender equality. I got to hear from Jocelyn Bignold. She's the CEO of Macaulay Community Services for Women. She's an Order of Australia recipient, and she spoke about the issue of domestic violence. I was really fortunate to be able to ask her about how faith-based organisations can move forward gender equality, and she said that our role is really about educating and raising awareness about these issues. So despite the challenge of us making a more gender-just world, I look to individuals like these and I see that although we are in for a long journey, we are not in for a lonely one. David wanted me to talk about expressing faith at the conference, and I thought this was a really interesting question because it's quite tricky to express faith at the UN because I guess what you'd say as like side street evangelism is not allowed. It's discouraged because it actually doesn't help us move forward in discussions that benefit everyone. So I think one of the tricky things also about being a faith-based organisation at the UN is that many people and many feminists have preconceived notions about the church, and many people have been hurt by the church as women. We don't have to look far to see that the church is still seeing women as second-class citizens, not in all spaces, but in some. So as a faith-based organisation, just being at the conference and saying we're here and we want to work together with you to advance gender equality, that's expressing our faith. That's showing people that Christianity, that it's not everyone, and we're here to be included in these discussions and to work forward together. So David also wanted me to talk about what impact I had on myself and others. The conference was quite different this year because it was online. So I had quite a lot of help from my facilitator in networking with people. That was a really important aspect of when Girls Brigade has participated in this conference in the past. For example, my facilitator made connections with an individual named Helen Fisher. She works for Open Doors International. She's the gender-specific religious persecution officer. And that connection was something that we could bring into our sessions. So my team member Jessie and I got to speak with Helen about gender-specific religious persecution, and it was a great chance to have an expert and some young people have a discourse about how we can move forward in that area, especially as a church. I think one of the things that I learnt was that I'd always seen the UN to be quite this big entity, quite abstract, but I think that what I learnt at the UN was that the tangible changes that are happening, they're not happening in those halls. They're happening when the people who have attended these conferences go back to their churches and their schools and their workplaces and they say, what have I learnt and what can we do to move forward? So really the change is happening with us. It's not happening in those bigger spaces. Although there are important changes happening there, there's policies being made, but ultimately it's down to the individual and interpersonal level for us to move forward those big abstract policies. And I guess what my hope is going forward is that Girls Brigade can find ways to equip our participants to advocate for social justice. I've noticed that lots of our girls are really cognizant about the issues affecting our world, especially things like climate change. I mean, we turn the news on and that's all we see. Even, just having our girls listen to what's happening in Parliament. It can feel quite disempowering to be that young and to hear all these things happening and not know how to change it. So I think that my hope going forward is that we can put things in place that equip our girls to see the issues that they want to change and to know how to engage in international relations and processes that can be that change. And I think that my experience is a bit of an example of that. I mean, I was not quite empowered to participate, and Girls Brigade really gave me the platform that I would not have been able to have otherwise. And I think that's been quite a unique experience, and I really hope that that's something that we can continue to provide girls with in years to come. And being part of the Economic and Social Council actually does give us the privilege to get many more girls over the years to participate in UNCSW. So yeah, I guess my hope going forward as well is that we continue to actively look at how we treat women in the church and to challenge the ideals that we've had, because ultimately Jesus was a feminist, and it's important that we follow his example. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you.